Today we're looking at the first lecture of the winter 1931 term of Jung's vision seminars. The first term concluded with a vision that is critical to what we might call Jung's psychological theory, which suggests the possibility of an encounter with the bottom, or perhaps ground, of the collective unconscious, represented in the vision as the ambivalent eyes of an animal. This encounter is the archetypal initiation rite, or descent, subsequent to which the visioner ascended and took her place, as it were, within the natural world, being crowned by the therianthropic god. For the close reader, the parallels with Christian history, doctrine, symbolism, and experience are clear. It is for this reason, perhaps, that Jung starts the new term considering why God was revealed in pagan rather than Christian symbols. In formulating his highest principle, he says, man formulates himself, and always as what's furthest from him. When we say our God is love, he says, we know it is not true. We say that in order to compensate for the fact that we do not love enough. We talk of community and relationship because we have none. We always talk of things we do not possess. But these visions, Jung suggests, are spontaneous actions of the unconscious, not self-made formulations. Here, the psyche is spontaneously liberated from the usual, merely arbitrary management and is given over to itself, to a factor which is not identical with the conscious will or intention. The patient rather sees the psyche as an objective fact and sees the value of psychical events. So, he says, since our patient started originally with a conception of the divine which was limited by puritanical prejudices, the God that appears to her is rather naturally just the opposite. Before returning to the question of this compensation, though, Jung then suggests, by way of two further examples, of the dreams on the one hand of a, quote, puritanical lady and a clergyman, the way the unconscious or suppressed Dionysian and feminine principles, the principles of earthiness, wine, and ecstasy, intrude on the so-called ecclesiastical prejudices of the overly masculinized, he says, Protestant church. I'd refer you to the text for these examples. Returning to the question of compensation, Jung suggests that the visioner's initiation with the satyr god, also known as Pan, is an experience of a living presence, the objective psyche. When you cease, he says, like the visioner had, to assume you are the inventor and instigator of your psychical life, you're no longer alone in the psychical world. You no longer depend on the company of other people to feel a presence outside of yourself. That all modern people naturally assume that nothing exists in the psychical world which they had not made is the best possible demonstration, he says, of their God Almightiness. But rather through initiations of the type we saw in the visioner, through certain training and exercises, something happens and one is no longer alone in one's mind, and one can then say that they have encountered something objective, some absolute reality. That, he says, is the mystery of initiation. So the first vision of the new term he then gives as follows. A man and a woman emerge from a scarab beetle and gaze at their reflections in a pond. The man dives in and resurfaces with a ring, which he then presses into the forehead of the woman. Here the scarab is known to the visioner as its chthonic or underground version of the sun god, and he says there's an association here too with the Egyptian idea that the scarab hatched from itself, from a ball of dung that it made, a sort of phoenix myth, he says, of the rising and setting sun. So it was called the Keper Ra, the emerging sun, and the scarab was a symbol of fertility and regeneration. After the vision of God, then, comes a new revelation concerning the relationship between man and woman. Here, this second revelation is like the final vision of the last term. In that vision, the visioner realized that things happen in her psyche which she has not made. In the second, she realizes that things happen to her feelings, which she has not invented. As the first ran counter to the conventional notion that one is responsible for one's thoughts and fantasies, the second runs counter to the conventional notion that one can simply deny inconvenient feeling.